Welcome back to another Animation Breakdown. Episode 127 is here, our first venture into the final stages of this tournament. Only Jiren is left, so if we weren't in climax mode before, we definitely are now. The first half comes to us from Toei Animation Philippines, specifically Paul Año Nuevo. If you watched my staff list video the other day, I was a bit concerned about how Hiroyuki Itai, one of the other supervisors on this episode, was going to be able to look after an entire half after only 4 weeks. I theorized that Toei Phils may pop up, which would of course make much more sense. Thankfully they did, and so Itai only needed to supervise a quarter of an episode alongside Masahiro Shimanuki. Año Nuevo is one of the most talented staff members from the Philippines, and it's not too surprising that the bulk of the action in his first half is filled with his traits. His smoke is everywhere, and he seems to have animated the majority of the action in this half that wasn't reused. Vegeta and Goku versus Jiren, for example, is all him, and I think it really highlights the strength of this half's storyboard the most. That storyboard comes to us from Kazuya Kurosawa, one of Super's strongest directors. He was responsible for episode 125 as a whole, so it's nice to see him injecting his directorial quality into the weaker half of this episode. The way the fight on the side of the arena is framed is wonderful. I really like the way the characters kind of seamlessly move in and out of the frame. I think 17 knocking Vegeta away and him landing is one of the best examples of this, and again with Vegeta punching Jiren with Goku popping up behind him as well. I'm not really sure how believable this all is as far as the no flying rule goes, but whatever, at least it's framed nicely. The animation itself is passable, it's pretty limited as a whole with a focus on effects, and the stuff that's more animated has been reused. Funnily enough, both reused scenes were originally by Atsushi Nikaido. The first part comes from episode 124 and it pops up again at the start of the second half, this time from episode 125. I have to say, I'm not really considering this a complaint, since with the absence of the horrendously overdone effects, I can actually see the animation this time around. I really love Nikaido's intense line work. In terms of art quality in this half, Takeo Ide, the chief animation supervisor, has more or less tidied everything up. As always, his work stands out for being particularly bulky and manly looking, so unsurprisingly he's become a bit of a fan favourite, especially in light of his strong showing in this arc. Tadayoshi Yamamuro also appears to be here, correcting the opening scenes in particular, which also houses quite a nice little rotation. It's pretty cool to see him actually having a visible presence on the series for once, though I think I probably speak for everyone when I say I wish he would have shown up consistently throughout this series instead of right at the end. I'm sure there's a good reason for it though. The half wraps up with 17 getting up from an attack before cutting to Goku, and this is the one section in this half that I'm really unsure about. It kind of looks like Chi Young-se's effects work, and that would explain the art quality too, but because it's so blurred and because Año Nuevo also has quite similar smoke at times, it's hard for me to say for sure. Again, because Yamamura is correcting things, I can't just say it's choose because of the artwork either. Not really sure on this one, but it's a nice way to wrap up the half. This was a pretty strong showing from Toei Phils, and I think the only poor thing that stood out to me was in that opening scene that I just mentioned. The animator's layout really killed the scale of the arena that was set last week and kind of squashed the impact of the scene. Jiren went from looming over everyone to kind of just standing on a little podium. A talented animator may get given a really basic board like this that he then exaggerates and pushes into a more dynamic looking shot more akin to maybe something like this. Layouts are essentially blueprints that animators make for their scenes, which the background artists work off of too, so it's a really essential part of the process to get right. Thankfully, it's a very tiny instance and doesn't really matter, but I wanted to bring it up because dynamic layouts are what really sell a scene I want to talk about later. For now though, let's move into this second half. Hiroyuki Itai is the supervisor for this section, and like I said earlier, he only had 4 weeks to supervise this. Unsurprisingly, he hasn't animated anything himself, instead sticking entirely to corrections as predicted, but it's really impressive work. His drawings are very polished and he dominates this half far more than Shimanuki, who actually had 8 weeks. I said 7 in my staff video, but I forgot about the break over Christmas. Itai is far and away the superstar supervisor here, and whether or not you like his prominent and rounded noses, I think it's hard to argue that these aren't at least very well drawn. The first bit of noteworthy animation comes from Futoshi Higashide, who animates the Great Beam Struggle. It's filled with some lovely looking effects. He really loves to use large hulking beams, and the way they enlarge for the explosion adds some major impact. Although he does animate a little bit of action before the Nikaido reuse I mentioned earlier, his contribution is fairly light on movement. I really do think we're headed for one massively animated episode instead of a string of ones that are good but only feature a few outstanding moments. His scene leads right into another surprise appearance from Naoki Tate, who animates almost this entire section with Frieza and Jiren. This is the scene I want to talk about regarding layouts. Tate's a real master of taking a storyboard and turning it into an incredibly dynamic bit of work, and it's plain to see here. Whether it be the Inazuma kick, Frieza against the rocks, or my personal favourite, Jiren punching away Golden Frieza, the compositions are outstanding. Very few people play around with extreme foreshortening in the way Tate does, and it's always nice to see. Animation-wise, this is a little bit more animated than Higashide's work. The flurries are rather limited, but there's a neat little bit of character acting while Frieza's talking later on, and of course the section where Jiren jumps down to 17's level is super stylish. This entire scene's been corrected, and I'm not 100% sure by who. The section where he becomes golden looks like Yamamuro, but the parts before don't look like anyone I'm familiar with. Either way, they're fine corrections, and they keep Tate's love of exaggerated expressions intact, so there are no complaints from me here. I feel like Tate's probably only going to do key animation from here on out, which is why we're seeing him so regularly now. I have to say, as much as I do like the individual components of this scene, it's a bit weird and patchwork. Frieza coming in to kick Jiren is Tate, but flying through the rocks is someone else. When you cut that out, it flows just as smoothly, so it's like it was added afterwards. Again, as Frieza transforms, there's this weird jolt where Frieza starts talking for a second, but when you remove that, it just flows like normal. It's as though he drew one lengthy scene which was then chopped up and added to by the director later on. I don't think that necessarily says anything, but I felt it was worth mentioning. Shimanuki comes in shortly after this, and as I mentioned earlier, he really doesn't do much, and I don't quite understand why, considering all of the time he's had. His scene where 17 sacrifices himself shows off his trademark debris, but that's kind of it. Shimanuki's been so lackluster this tournament, it's bizarre. Itai with 4 weeks should never outshine someone doing far less work in double the time. I would really love to know what's going on here. Sato's storyboard is kinda weak in this section too, honestly. 18's performance is wonderful, but the choice of angles are really reserved, and Shimanuki's character animation is pretty poor. I don't think Sato's board on the whole is bad though. Despite my thoughts on Jiren's backstory, I think its presentation visually was very strong. I was very impressed by Imamura's direction in this sequence too. The grainy textured walls, the quick cuts, the close-ups, it all comes together to really sell this backstory. Although I can't say I'm a big fan of the narrative content, I'd be lying if I said it wasn't at least presented very well visually. I feel like I've kind of picked at this episode a lot in this video, and I do stand by what I've said, but I actually really enjoyed it. I think as a standalone episode, it's really well put together and actually succeeded in what it aimed to do, even if I don't necessarily enjoy every narrative beat. This was only the second script from Kenichi Yamashita on Super, and it will likely be his last considering the series is done now. I'm curious to know how you guys feel about it on the whole, so do let me know down in the comment section below about that. Next week, we've got Osamu Ishikawa and Yuji Hakamada tackling the big Vegeta episode, so I'm really looking forward to that. Ishikawa has often struggled to draw Vegeta in the past, but the NEP was filled with drawings from him and they all looked very competent, so my worries there are pretty much squashed for now. Hopefully they deliver. But that is all. If you'd like to know more about the upcoming episodes, do check out my upcoming staff video for all the details and my predictions. Be sure to rate this video and leave a comment down below letting me know how you felt about the writing, in particular Jiren's backstory. Did it make him a more interesting character to you, or was it too little too late? Subscribe if you're new, and I will of course see you next time.